Welcome back, everyone. This is week three. Master your reactions. So last week we spoke about understanding her, and that gave us a little bit of an understanding of, some of the things that she would be going through physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and gave us a better framing for maybe how we can view ourselves and how we can respond differently. So now this week we're going to take on that. We're going to move on that, and we're going to start to master our reactions. How we're actually responding is super, super important. And this is the beginning of us developing more self leadership, more emotional fluency, and essentially learning to regulate our emotions and our nervous system and show up really calm and grounded and steady, and starting to actually break the blowing up and shutting down cycle. So the hyper or hypo arousal cycle, where we're not responding from a centered, grounded place. We're actually a bit scatty. Now we're going to start looking at how we can respond from that central point where we are grounded and we're strong, we're clear, and we're showing real emotional leadership. Now, if you want to lead in love or connect with your partner at a higher level, this is the sort of stuff that changes everything. Like when you can react from a more grounded place, when you can actually like own things, you can move through things, you can become more compassionate to yourself and to the other person and feel less under threat. That creates more safety in the relationship, because essentially what our partner is doing, because we are co-regulating human beings, right? Humans are co-regulators. When one person is in a very triggered nervous system state, so they're upregulated, we will co-regulate to that as human beings. So you can sometimes find, like, in high stress work environments, like everybody's stressed because it's just like the soup that's stirring up and everybody's getting caught up in this big whirlwind of stress and a lack of safety and overstimulation. Whereas you go to an ashram or like a temple, a yogic temple, you know, the vibe is totally different, right? So you co-regulate to that space and you become super calm and peaceful and thoughtful and introspective and quiet and slow the pace down, and everything about your nervous system, the way your mind's working, actually co-regulates with the environment you're in. So you take that back into your home. If you're constantly stressed, if you're reacting too quickly, if your nervous system is inflamed and you're not taking time to think or speak, and even just before you think or speak, your partner is picking up on those things, right? So if you're not a safe space inside, so if you can't build safety for you, then she will not feel safety outside of you. um, and that is one of the most important things. It's like to become a safe space for her. And it's oftentimes I hear men saying, yeah, but what about me? It's like, well, this is for you too. It is for you too. Becoming a safe space inside yourself is for you first, and then it allows for more connection, which is what we want anyway. And most men don't realize that your nervous system runs your relationship. Like the tone in your voice, the look in your eyes, the way you breathe, the you know where you're looking, how you're looking, your posture. Are you defensive or are you open? Do you have loads of saliva in your mouth? Does that mean you're nervous? Are you looking down? Are you looking up? Like all of these different things, all the subtle cues that you're giving off, give your partner a signal that she can read, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, that something is not right. And oftentimes, when we're approached about this, we can say that we're just fine. But we're giving off these signals, and her body reads them faster than your words can actually articulate them. And this week is about emotional command, not suppression. We're not shutting things down. We're actually going to become really good friends with our emotions and our reactions and how we do them. We're going to start to build mastery. So suppression is not mastery. It's not dominion over them. It's actually compassion and connection and collaboration with them. So when you can stay centered, grounded, controlled under pressure, you become an emotional anchor in your home. You become the fulcrum that the home can run around. I often say that us as men, husbands, even dads, we are the weathermen of our house. We dictate the weather in our household. We come down like a storm cloud. It's bad weather all day in the house. We come down with the sun shining and gratitude in our hearts. Then that radiates out into the house, and the house becomes warm and safe and loving and compassionate and kind. So it's important for us to become the thermostat, not the thermometer. So we want to set the temperature and the weather in our house, not react to it. So becoming the thermostat, not the thermometer. That's what we want to look at, mastering your reactions so that you can set the tone for your household. And one of the theories that we can start to explain this with is called the polyvagal theory. So this is by Dr. Stephen Porges. The polyvagal theory shows that the vagus nerve, that is the body's main communication line between the brain, the heart, the lungs, and the gut, is constantly scanning our environment for safety or threat. And he calls this neuroception. So essentially the subconscious detection of cues of safety or danger. So our body's constantly trying to read our environment for safety and danger. And what happens is, if it's safe, um, the social engagement system, so the heart rate is steady, the brain is smooth, and the voice is warm. You can listen and empathize and connect. So in safety, you activate your social engagement system, which tells your body to do all of these things. Slow the heart rate. The brain is not cluttered. It's not overstimulated. Your voice and your communication starts to calm. Your ability to listen and critically think and empathize and connect increases. And that would be more your kind of parasympathetic nervous system. So when you feel safe, you drift into your parasympathetic nervous system. When you're under threat and you're triggered, you go into your sympathetic nervous system. So this is the fight or flight response. This is, adrenaline spiking, cortisol running through the body. Parts of your brain actually shut down. Essentially, our body is trying to communicate all of this information because of this, the vagus nerve traveling down the body. It's connecting to the heart, the lungs, the gut, all these vital organs and places in the body. These parts of our body have things called neurites in them. So they're similar to neurons. They have electrical signals that fire between them, and they store and pass and store information. And that information is often being read by those organs and try to communicate up through the vagus nerve into the brain. But what happens is, if there's an influx, almost like a surge of information, our brain can almost shut down the gates, and all this information hits a bottleneck at the brainstem and the amygdala, which is for processing emotions, and it detects fear really, really quickly. And then it filters it through, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and tries to understand what this looks like. Is this similar to something that I've experienced before? Oh yeah, it's like that time somebody did that. Okay, great, right, that confirms that we are in a fear state now. System shut down. We don't need the neocortex anymore. We don't need this rational thinking brain. You guys can just take a break. We'll take it from here. And it sends the signals back down to produce adrenaline, cortisol. Right, we're in fight or flight state now. We just need to either run or fight. And it's a real intense flip of the switch, that once this information is coming from these organs, and oftentimes you can feel heartbreak. It's a real thing. Your heart is processing that information. People say trust your gut. Okay, great. There's actually information in your gut. Your gut picks up on a lot of things before your brain does. So you can trust your gut. It's sending information up this vagus nerve to your brain. And if you can actually connect all three, your gut, your heart, and your brain, you have access to what is called your not your nervous system, your intuition. You have access to your intuition. So if you can slow things down and get into your parasympathetic nervous system, not drifting into this threat, sympathetic fight flight state, if you can catch this and slow things down and stop long enough to create a bit of peace and actually allow the information to trickle up into the brain and get to your neocortex, where you can think about it, rationalize it, and think of a problem solve. You can problem solve it. Then you're going to be able to respond much more calmly and um, intelligently than if you're just reacting really, really quickly from this stressed state. And Viktor Frankl, author of the book Man's Search for Meaning, famous psychiatrist, psychologist, one of his quotes in that book is that between stimulus and response, there's a space and time. And in that space and time lies the pathway to our growth and freedom. So if we can capture that space and time between stimulus and response, and give ourselves some grace long enough to respond and let the information come through to our brain fully to be processed and understood and rationalized, then we can start to respond to our environment much more effectively. So this polyvagal theory of neuroception, it can operate in two different ways. So it's either inside out or outside in. So something can happen outside. A tiger shows up in the room. It's a pretty significant thing to happen. You can control that. Tiger shows up in the room. You are going to respond to a trigger that's happening outside of your body. So you see something happening, something happens outside of you. You your body starts to respond to it. So your eyes pick it up, but your body is responding to it from a nervous system state, and it is happening outside of you, and you're reacting to it. Your brain is responding to it. Now, clearly, any situations of danger require fight or flight response, and they're really, really helpful. But what we have become unaccustomed to is actual, real danger situations in our modern life. The world is not very dangerous anymore. We've created so much comfort, convenience, consumption, and simplicity and ease in our lives, and we constantly seek it. So we but our polyvagal system, the polyvagal theory, is still running all the time. That's like a genetic um, programming in every single human that we do that. So it's running anyway, but our world is not that dangerous compared to what it used to be before. So we're picking up on things. We're constantly scanning for dangers, and now we can actually apply the idea of danger or the feeling of danger to something that's not actually dangerous. And we see things happening, like our wife tuts or like rolls her eyes, or um, our kids go to like open the jar of something, and like immediately our brain like flips and it's like no, and like sees it as like this really dangerous thing, but actually it's not. We can regulate that nervous system, see it for what it is. It's just a jar of jam or honey or whatever it is. I can calmly say no, walk over, explain what's going on, and then move through that whole process of educating and creating more safety and being a safe space for them to be around. I don't need to, I can actually regulate and control this sympathetic response. Now, what's really, really important to remember is that that's the outside in. There is also the inside out. So, inside out is you think something. So, something happens, you generate a thought. That thought impacts how your nervous system is feeling, or it impacts the emotions that you're feeling. The emotions are stored in your body, and those emotions create a nervous system response, which impacts your hormones, which impacts so many different other um, like organs within the body. So just from thinking something, you can increase your heart rate. You can create an imbalance in your gut microbiome. You can change your breath rate, and your breathing starts to impact how your nervous system is flipping between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system states of fight or flight, rest and digest. You're bouncing all over the place just from a thought, and then you can perceive everything as a danger because you're getting yourself into this state, essentially overwhelm. So it can be overwhelmed. This is what Porges calls the dorsal vagal shutdown. So the freeze, numb, disassociation, shut down. So there's either the parasympathetic, safe, sympathetic, threat, like danger, and overwhelm is the dorsal vagal shutdown, where you just completely numb out, you disassociate, you can't deal, you fawn essentially. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn would be the overwhelm, the dorsal vagal shutdown. And what's interesting is you're not choosing these responses. These are all automatic, but you can learn to influence them. You can actually learn to capture that space and time between stimulus and response, and address how your body wants to respond, stop it responding in a negative way, and actually change that, choose a different path. Now, one of the best ways that I've seen this done is using the trigger tracker. So I developed this trigger tracker where essentially if these things are happening automatically, so let's say you are constantly getting angry or shutting down, or there's a negative response to something that's happening outside of you, whether it's inside out or outside in, negative response, negative situation, it's important to gather data on this. And sometimes our brains will, in fact all the time, our brains will seek confirmation bias. So unless you record exactly what happened as the camera sees it, your brain will forget the things that you're culpable for, just even 1, 2, 3, 10%, whatever. It will change your perception of the thing to protect your ego. Your ego is working all the time to defend you from outside attack. So the trigger tracker removes this, removes the ego, because it's just based on facts. Like, this is what happened. We record what happened before the trigger, it affected you, what happened during your triggered state, and what happened after, in the aftermath, the fallout from your triggered response. So the trigger tracker just purely captures data, completely objectively, as the camera sees it, facts only, no perceptions or opinions. Just, this is what happened. I then did this, and this is how I tried to repair it, or what people said to me afterwards, or what I felt like after. So it's before, during, and after. And what this does is it creates a little bit of pattern recognition. So this polyvagal state that you're finding yourself in, whatever happens, just record the data. And when you start to see patterns emerging, when you start to see things happening again and again, if you're writing the same thing down 3, 4 times a week, it's clear that this is a trigger for you. Then you can start to actually address, why is this a trigger for me? What is happening here? What is it that's actually affecting me with that thing? And you can now start to put mechanisms in place to lessen the effect of that thing. Either you eliminate it completely by controlling your environment and making sure that thing is no longer available to anybody or you or whatever. You can address the environment and design the environment to be less triggering for you. Therefore, over time, there are less triggers, more connection, more symbiosis, more safety, more love in the household, and you go longer periods of time without a shutdown or a blow up. And this trigger tracker isn't to shame you, it isn't to catch things and to uh, character assassinate yourself. It's just a data finding mission, because what we want to do is we want to put in coping mechanisms, and until we know what we're putting coping mechanisms in for, they are pointless. You wouldn't even know, you wouldn't even understand what to try and stop unless you know what you're stopping. So let's say I get triggered when my kids do X, Y, or Z. Okay, great. Then when I see that about to happen, I can actually put things in place, because particularly with kids, but also in relationships, because relationships can be emotionally volatile as well. With kids and relationships, it's important to look at how we have contributed to the state of those things or people that are triggering me. How have I contributed to them acting like this towards me in the last 6 minutes, 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? Like, what have I done in the last 6 minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years that has contributed to this person behaving like this? And is there something I need to change about my contribution or collaboration in them feeling this way or acting this way, that would negate it for me, that would lessen it for me, that would actually remove the trigger? Like, what do I have to do now that I can start to turn this around? Because oftentimes we are the agents of our own destiny. We're creating these situations of sabotage. We're creating these really, really difficult parts in our lives, but we don't assign ownership to ourselves because of that part of our ego that's seeking to defend us and remove responsibility pretty much at all times. We have to work really, really hard to go against that. So essentially, what we have to do is we have to find the data and then look at where we've played a part in it. And if we haven't played a part, which is incredibly rare, then our part is to put boundaries in, to actually talk about it and say, listen, this is happening and it's really not okay for me. And that could have been your part in it anyway, that you didn't put boundaries in beforehand. And this person just thought that that was okay for them. So essentially what we're looking to do is we're looking to gather data and then react to the data so that we know exactly what it is we're trying to stop. And then we can start to create more calm, um, composed responses to triggers that are happening in our lives. And that calm will literally tell your partner's body that she is safe with you. So if something's happening in your relationship, or something is happening in your communication, how have I contributed to this? The way she's speaking to me, the way she's treating me in the last 6 minutes, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, that's allowed this to get to this part, this place, and what is my part in it, and how can I start to change that? How can I take more ownership and leadership in this interaction, and regulate my nervous system so that she feels safe to even have this conversation. Now, in order to achieve all of this, we have to look at what's called your window of tolerance. So kind of what Viktor Frankl was talking about, this space and time between stimulus and response is dictated by your window of tolerance, your capacity for stress. Because essentially, like I said before, our world used to be very dangerous, and we would pick up on dangerous things happening, and it would be very definitive. It would be obvious, like, we're in safety, we're not. Right now, our polyvagal system is running all the time and picking up on things that aren't stressful, that aren't dangerous, that aren't triggering, and making them so. And it's because potentially a lot of our windows of tolerance have been shortened, like they've been diminished, they've been made smaller. Now, our window of tolerance is the zone where your nervous system can handle stress without losing rational thought or connection or clarity, being able to talk, being able to connect with people. And inside the window is like this, like sweet spot. Inside the window is where you can think and feel and connect, and you feel good. So that's the space that you want to be in. Above the window of tolerance, so when you become, upregulated, you become hyper aroused. That's that fight, flight, anger, anxiety attack. And below the window is when you go down and out the window, you become hypoaroused. That's the freeze and fawn and numbness and shutdown, and essentially the complete detachment from what's going on. Now, the goal isn't to stay perfectly calm all the time. That's not the goal of understanding the window of tolerance. It's to notice when you leave the window and return as quick as possible. So through the trigger tracker, you can start to navigate and understand your environment, and you can then use some practices. So you're trying to minimize the amount of triggers by using the trigger tracker, but then through working with your window of tolerance, you're trying to minimize how many things actually trigger you fully. And that's your own work, right? So it's being able to notice when you're leaving the window and return quicker, because we're all human. We all make mistakes, we all get triggered, we all get angry, we all get upset about stuff, and that's okay. It's part of it. We want to welcome these emotions in, but it's about becoming better friends with them, becoming more acquainted with these different emotions. So essentially widening your window of tolerance. So it's not about never going out of it. It's about making sure that the window is maybe bigger, so you've got more space to navigate inside the window before you become hyper or hypo aroused. You're not so easily hyper aroused and put into fight, flight, anger, anxiety, attack. You're not so easily hypo aroused, going to freeze, sadness, numbness, shutdown, detachment. You can accommodate much more of this. You're less susceptible to these extreme emotions that send you outside of your window of tolerance. Now, some ways that you can widen this: first of all, trigger tracker, remove the triggers, try to understand them a little bit better. But then it's about working with your nervous system. So regular breath work. If you've never done breath work, it is such a grounding exercise to breathe in for 4, hold for 6, and breathe out for 7 for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. If you can do that, regularly, not just in crisis moment, because the best time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining, as JFK said. So if you're in a good mood, if you're in a good place, do your breath work. Prime your nervous system for being able to handle stress and danger or perceived danger. So when the sun is shining, do your breath work. In for 4, hold for 6, out for 7. Another breathwork technique is called box breathing, where you just do 4 in, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. So it's 4, 4, 4, 4. You're just in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, out for 4 seconds, and hold it for 4. And you just repeat that again for anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes. And what this does, this kind of breath work, allows your nervous system to reset. So essentially, you're switching consciously from any overstimulated, hyper aroused, or stressed sympathetic nervous system state directly into your parasympathetic nervous system state. You are moving it across consciously and purposely, and in full awareness of what you're doing, you're watching it and feeling it move over into the other side. Um, Essentially, what we're looking to do is we're looking to take control of our body's autonomic responses, because we can do that. And then when you get really good at it and you can feel it and you can shift it, you can actually use those things in crisis situations. And one of the ones that I've used that's worked well for me, and I want to gift it to you, is just called the Make a Better Choice mantra. And it's why my company is called Mantra. Make a Better Choice mantra is essentially built from the idea of counting down from 10. When people used to say to you, if you get angry, just count back from 10 and you won't be angry anymore. It's like, right, okay, that may have worked in the 1950s. I'm not entirely sure of that, but essentially with the prevalence of neurodiversity and ADHD and other kind of neurodivergent traits in modern society, you tell somebody with ADHD to count back from 10 and not be angry anymore. Like, their brain does not handle that well. It's like a kid trying to tell a kid, right, I'm going to count to three and then you better stop it. Like, their world is ending in 3 seconds as far as they're concerned. So the brain, that just puts people into a higher stimulated nervous system state. So what needs to happen at the same time as we're doing any sort of counting exercise, it needs to be accompanied by the breath. So we're actually shifting the nervous system through hacking this sympathetic parasympathetic switch. We're hacking it and we're using our breath to shift it. And we are counting, so giving ourselves some kind of timeline to work towards. But at the same time we're doing all those things, it's important to use the power of mantra. So mantra is um, uh, like a mind hacking skill. The word mantra actually means a tool of the mind. So at the same time that we've paused, we're using the breath, and we're giving ourselves a timeline. We're actually going to use this mantra as a tool of our mind to visualize, to talk about something. And for me, what I say is make a better choice. So I'm literally repeating the words in my mind, make a better choice. So I'm willing myself to make a better choice. So all three of these things combined allow me to capture this space and time between stimulus and response, and actually will myself to make a better choice. I'm asking this of the situation. I'm pulling the wisdom out of my own mind because I'm using this tool, this mantra, to slow everything down and allow myself the grace and time to think of a better response. We don't need to respond so quickly all the time. This is us mastering our reactions. Our partner shouts at us. The desire to meet that and co-regulate to that energy is almost overwhelming sometimes. When somebody criticizes us or says something about us that we don't like, the desire to inflict the same damage that we felt back is sometimes too inviting. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to realize that you can never solve a problem with the same energy that created it. So your partner comes to you angry, your partner comes to you jealous, envious, upset, um, resentful, contempting, and they direct this energy at you. If you direct it back, it's only going to make it worse. So you can never solve a problem with the same energy that created it. If this is coming to you, the overwhelming desire to reflect it back, we need to hack that. We need to shift our nervous system state and wake up parts of our brain that are being shut down as a result of this biochemical response. Apply tools like the trigger tracker beforehand, and then the make a better choice mantra during conflict, and then respond in ways that actually allow for more connection. And one of the best ways in conflict that we can do this is by observing instead of absorbing. So when our partner is, as we perceive it, attacking us, so if we perceive our partner as attacking us in any way, it's important to get curious about that. And curiosity is the key. Curiosity um, kills the danger of creating more conflict. Curiosity is what we need. We need healthy conflict. We need to move into that space, but we don't need it to blow up and become uncontrolled. We need to manage that conflict in a really curious, empathetic, understanding, conscious way with a desire to learn more about what's going on with the problem. Okay, what is the problem? I'm going to observe this. You're saying this, I'm just going to observe it. I'm not going to absorb it. I'm going to hold up a bit of a shield and just make sure that whatever needs to get through gets through, and the rest of it can just be reflected back. It's not mine. I don't need to take everything that everybody says to me on face value. Just because somebody is saying it doesn't mean it's true. So, observing what somebody is saying and giving them more time to say it, maybe even asking them to repeat it. Can you repeat that for me again? So that they get to say it a second time. They might even rehear something and change it because it didn't sound good the first time. So let's say your partner comes to you in heavy conflict and a stimulated state, and she's boom straight on at you about something. Maybe you were in the wrong, but the way she's delivering it, you might need her to. If you ask her to repeat it, it might soften. She might repeat it in a different way. She might use different words. She might actually realize that she didn't pick up on something. The fact you're asking her to repeat it means you want to sense check something. And when that happens, their brain, another person's brain, if we're asking them to sense check something, they will double down and really think about what they're saying now. Right, okay, I better be absolutely clear. He's asked me to repeat this. That means something might be wrong. So I've got to be absolutely clear about what I'm saying. So just by asking somebody to repeat something, having the calm and composure to say, could you just repeat that for me, please? Gives you time to think about it and hear it a second time. They might catch something and change it. And there you have an evolution of the conflict. So mastering your reactions enough to like pause and hold, make a better choice. Can you repeat that for me? And then observe instead of absorb. And what you're looking to do is to think, where is this going? Like, what is the outcome of this? Where is this person wanting to get to? And if it was really hurtful, if it was something that was really hurtful and unnecessary, instead of attacking the thing, you can not attack. Instead of addressing the thing, you can address the intent. You can ask the person, okay, I hear you. What was your intention in saying that to me? Or what was your intention in saying it in that way? Did you mean for it to come across like this? Did you mean for that to sound demeaning and undermining? Did you mean for that to sound or make me feel this way? What was your intention? And again, just passing it back to the other person so that you can sense check it and get a deeper understanding of what is actually happening here. So being able to regulate your nervous system, when the sun is shining, fix the roof and do these things when you're feeling good so that you're training yourself in peacetime to be prepared for wartime. You're training yourself in peace to be ready for war. Make sure that you are well rested, that your food and your diet and your sleep is in a good position because that impacts your nervous system state as well. Address how much or how many stimulants you're using, how many coffees you're having a day. Do you feel like you could come off coffee? Could you switch to decaf? Because essentially, um, coffee and stimulants, even high processed sugar, can stimulate the adrenal response, and your adrenal glands can become really fatigued. And when you have adrenal fatigue and burnout, your capacity to deal with stress and overwhelm is much diminished because you are not detoxifying the body. The organs that are in charge of regulating adrenaline and cortisol in your body are compromised. And again, back to that polyvagal theory, these organs are sending information up to the body that something is not right. They are not operating in a calm, steady state. So any stimulation that's happening outside of your being is going to trigger that because they're not ready to. The window of tolerance that your body is holding is small. So the ways that we open up this window of tolerance is by doing all of these practice: food, diet, sleep, um, mindfulness, working with the breath, working with these physical practices, and starting to really work with your nervous system. Because if you don't, you might find yourself behaving in ways that you don't want to, that you don't subscribe to, that you don't want to be seen as, you don't want to be portraying this image of yourself. And one of the most well documented and studied phenomena within psychology, and in this particular psychology within conflict, is the drama triangle. So the drama triangle focuses on three roles within any conflict or conversation or disagreement or situation, and that is the victim, the villain, and the hero. Now, the victim is somebody who will say, I can't do that. I can't do this for whatever reason, whether it's hypo aroused, I'm useless, or hyper aroused, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. Essentially, the victim will show up and say that I can't do this. It's impossible for me to do this. Now, the victim will always find a villain to blame for their victimhood, and they will avoid responsibility of herodom, like the hero space, in order to stay the victim, because it reinforces this powerlessness that they can't make a move because the victim is here and it's impossible to change this. And the victim says, I can't do this. The villain backs that up, whether they're saying it explicitly or the victim actually hears it and feels it from them. They are saying, the villain is delivering the message that, yeah, you're right, you can't do this. Now the hero space sits there empty, and the victim is waiting for somebody else to occupy that space. And when that hero comes in and saves the day, what they are saying is, don't worry, I'll do it for you. So the victim says, I can't. The villain says, yeah, you're right, you can. The hero says, don't worry, I'll do it for you. All three of these disempower you. So if you're finding yourself ever blaming someone, blame is part of this dynamic. I call it the blame, shame, disclaim dynamic. When you're blaming a villain, you automatically put yourself in the victim state and you shame yourself. There is an inherent shame that comes back to you. And because of what I said earlier about our ego does not like that. It does not like to own ourselves, to own this and see ourselves as less than or worse than or anything worth less. It will justify why it's not your fault and it's actually their fault. And it will double down on this and it will continue to blame even more fiercely that person is the problem and that it's impossible to fix. So I just need to wait for this hero to come in. And that is the disclaiming of responsibility to change it. So you blame the villain, you shame yourself, you disclaim responsibility of the hero, and you stay locked into this victimhood. So if you ever blame yourself, if you blame your partner for anything that they're doing, anything that they're saying, you are essentially shaming yourself and not giving yourself a voice to challenge the thing, not giving yourself a voice to step up and change it. Maybe the thing you're blaming them for is something that you need to do. Maybe the thing you're blaming them for is something that you should have spoken about a long time ago and put boundaries in around. Maybe the thing you're blaming them for is not even a true thing. You haven't even had a conversation. You need to actually ask them real hard questions and have a very difficult conversation where you get to the truth of what the problem is. But it's much easier for our brains to stay in victim mode and just gossip and blame and shift responsibility. Now, imagine this is a game of rounders. There's three bases, the victim, the villain, and the hero. If they are all filled, nobody can move. Just like in a game of rounders, you can't move if all bases are filled. So what is important to do is to empty the hero space. So nobody's coming to save you. Don't ask for any hero to come in with a magic solution. And you move yourself from victim to hero. So you're actually moving yourself to, instead of hero, seeing it as a creator. So you actually, what do I want here? Asking questions like, what do I actually want to change here? What do I want to create as a result of stepping out of victimhood? What needs to change and how can I change it? How can I change it? Not them. They can stay where they are just now, but how can you address this and step out of victimhood into a powerful, self led creator and break this drama triangle? And what that does with all of this stuff before, the window of tolerance, the nervous system regulation, it shows her that you're willing to take ownership over things. It shows her that you're willing to move and create instead of victim, blame and shame. It shows her that you have emotional fluency and that you can express what's going on and that you can stand as the mountain in the storm of conflict and observe instead of absorb. It shows her that you can rest and regulate and be a safe space for her to come with something without the fear of being blamed for it, or without the fear of you putting her in the villain spot for something. She might have been there for a long time. She might feel like she's there now. So maybe it's time, instead of her moving to the hero spot and her being the one to create the shift, maybe it's up to you to create that shift and just change your perspective and become the hero of this story. So you're looking to create something instead of condemn something. That is the role of this hero, this creator, is to create something beautiful instead of condemn something that wasn't perceived to be working. Now, there's a lot in this session. It's very, very important that we get through it all. And the last thing that I want to talk about today is your shadows. So, similar to how we explored things that have happened in the past for your partner in the Understand Her session, I want to start to understand you. I want you to understand you a little bit more and see where your shadows are at play here, where your shadows are coming out. Essentially, our shadows are the parts of us that we've rejected, the parts of us that were either rejected, ridiculed, punished, and we became ashamed of. We didn't want them to be presented in the world, whether they were repressed by our environment, our parents, peers, and role models through behaviors that we exhibited, and they were not welcome, or we didn't feel like they belonged. There were parts of us that didn't belong, so they were repressed by our environment, or we perceived um, our social situations, our connections with other people, and our safety in the world as at risk by these things ourselves, and we suppress them. So either they were repressed directly by us exhibiting them and they were punished, rejected, ridiculed, or we just perceived threat and we suppressed them and self-edited in order to fit in and be welcome. So these parts of us are innate. They're parts of us. They're really true. I always think about it as like the pin and perspex toy that we used to have in the 90s, where you pushed your hand in and it made the handprint on the front. Now all of the pins that come forward are connected to positive anchors. That's the way our psychology works. Everything that is welcomed and celebrated and loved and feels like it belongs attaches itself to an anchor. Every pin that's left behind is something that met an impasse, a psychological impasse, whether it's rejection, ridicule, punishment, remorse, regret. All of these things cause us to leave a pin back. So essentially, the handprint that we see in the front of this toy isn't actually a true representation of who we are. It's something that we've created to be perceived properly by the world, or the way that we want to be by the world. And that's our persona. So our persona is something that we're presenting or performing to the world, and it's not a true representation of who we are, because our shadow is all the things that we've held back, all the things, and sometimes it's a really great part of ourselves, and we would call that the golden shadow, the beautiful part of ourselves that we just hid. Now, other shadows are different behaviors that might show up in Carl Jung's work, and Moore and Gillette, who wrote King, Warrior, Lover, Magician. They believe that our psyche, and we'll just look at men in this instance, every man has key parts to their psyche and their psychology that can be categorized in four different ways: the king, the warrior, the lover, or the magician. Now, the king is this kind of grounded leader. He's benevolent, he's beneficent, he has a vision of the long game, but he's able to look at the fine details. He is in control of his realm and his kingdom, and he's compassionate and self led, and has mastered shameless ownership and understands how to navigate conflict really, really well. So that's the king in his fullness. Now, in his shadows, he is either in an inflated state, the tyrant, or a deflated state, the weakling. So the tyrant seeks control, and it can often come from a situation in early life where we lost control, where we felt like we didn't have control, and or we got control by force and we really liked it. And that trait can lie in our shadow, ready to rear its head anytime somebody tries to take control away from us or tries to control us. Our tyrant can come online, and it can start to seek safety through these controlling mechanisms. In its deflated state, the weakling king, we tend to avoid responsibility, and this can drift us into that victim triangle again, the drama triangle, and into victimhood. When we avoid responsibility, when we say things are too hard and it's too complex, I don't understand, I just need somebody else to do it for me, that's where the king becomes totally deflated in his shadow and just gives up. Now, the way to start to work with this king energy is to work in with this idea of shameless ownership. So owning things that are out of alignment within your kingdom without applying any shame to yourself. If you can shamelessly own, then you can learn from a lesson really fast. And if you practice this skill over and over and over again, you can identify where you've gone wrong in something, own it as quickly as possible. Like Dale Carnegie says in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, one of the top skills is to, when you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. So, as fast as you can, own it, move through it, learn the lesson, and apply it in the next instance. That's a very, very high level king energy move. And it's important for us to stay grounded in that leadership that we are not going to get everything right. And that's the whole point. We're supposed to get things wrong. We're supposed to fail. We're supposed to learn from things. But so much of society and life and relationships demands perfection in our minds. And we try not to be imperfect. We try to show up in the best possible way, because if we're not, then we're broken or we're wrong or we're bad. And then in our minds, we might catastrophize and think, well, that's going to mean the end of this relationship. So at all costs, I've got to protect that. And that means becoming defensive and controlling, or fawning and becoming avoidant and shutting down into the weakling king. So, shameless ownership, top level skill for the king. Let's see if we can start to look at this week where our king is out of alignment. The other archetypes are the warrior, the magician, and the lover. The warrior is in charge of purpose and discipline and courage, acts in a courageous way. He is the illuminator of boundaries. He speaks clearly and directly. He is ready to protect the kingdom at all times. The warrior shows up to protect the kingdom with boundaries that are well communicated always. In his shadow, he shows up as the sadist or the masochist. The sadist in his inflated state, the masochist in his deflated state. So sadist is like rageful and vengeful. And what this comes from is oftentimes when we don't put in boundaries or we don't say the right things at the right times, and it leads to a fallout or a conflict, we can essentially avoid the responsibility. So the king stepped down, he's asked the warrior to step in. The warrior doesn't understand the situation, just sees somebody bypassing boundaries and just becomes rageful. But like I said before, where have you played a part in this in the last 6 minutes, hours, days, months, weeks, years, whatever? Showing up and actually taking ownership for how you've contributed to the current situation that you're experiencing um, removes any of the rage. Because yes, if somebody breaks into your house and your family's at risk, there's time for the warrior. That is the time for the warrior to show up. But oftentimes he's not needed in this sadistic, rageful state. And that's where we get confused with the warrior, because people see anger as a bad thing. Anger is a very, very healthy emotion. It is one of the core emotions: fear, anger, sadness, and joy. We need we need this. We need anger. We need to become friends with it. But when it turns to rage, it is not helpful in most situations day to day. Only if we are under threat, of death, does rage actually help us to defend ourselves. But most of the time, we don't need it. Anger is the emotion that gets shit done. You get pissed off at yourself. You get annoyed at yourself. Like you've procrastinated, delayed something. You get angry. Right? Okay, anger needs to get the job done. Purpose, discipline, courage, and direction, and let's do it. Warrior comes online, gets the job done. That's when the sadistic warrior can show up, because he's not ready to recognize that he is at fault here. He hasn't put the proper boundaries in place, and to defend himself, he becomes rageful and starts to just execute. Now, as the masochist, the kind of self-inflicting pain, deflated state of the warrior, this is where passivity comes in. So when the warrior is deflated, he's losing touch with his physical realm. He's not fit. He's not healthy. He's not sleeping well. He's become passive in his discipline. He's acting out of petulance instead of courage and compassion, and he is not showing up in the best possible way for him. Now, in this masochistic way, we can often become, again, the victim. We can start to say that, oh, it's not our fault, it's not their fault. And also, he can start to pile it on himself, like, I am the problem, I am the problem, this is me, it's all my fault, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. The inner critic can actually start to come online, which falls under the magician. We can actually start to give way to this inner critic coming out. Now, the magician is about insight, awareness, the creative mind, and dealing with information and getting clarity on things. So the magician works well with information, with data, with finances, with understanding structure. In the magician's shadow, in an inflated state, he is the manipulator. So when he has all this information, he can manipulate it and he can twist it and he can turn the story around and feed it back to the person. The magician in the manipulative state would often be a gaslighter. He would emotionally manipulate and abuse people by changing the story ever so slightly so the person starts to doubt themselves. That would be the magician in his inflated state. The magician in his deflated state would be the denying innocent one. So like the detached trickster is often called. He tricks people. He avoids culpability, and he's a magician. He's sleight of hand, like misdirection. Look over here, and the trick's over here. So that's how the magician shows up. Now, the magician needs clarity. He's very, very good at working with um, information and getting clarity to hand to the king so the king can make the proper decisions. So it's important to see where have you been, either the tyrant king, the sadistic warrior, the um, manipulative magician, or in the lover. The lover's in charge of connection, empathy, sensuality, beauty, um, emotional fluency. But in the lover's inflated state, in the shadow, he is the addict. He's constantly seeking the eternal orgasm, the eternal hedonistic pursuit of um, um, like pleasure. He's constantly seeking that. And when he doesn't have it, he becomes like thirsty for it. So the lover is in his inflated state the addict, and that could be becoming addicted to drugs, gambling, alcohol, sex, porn, junk foods, you name it, any different thing that you can be addicted to. That would be your lover in his addicted state, because essentially what the lover is doing when he drifts into the shadow is he's not getting his needs met in presence and connection with another human being. We have a fundamental need that when our needs are not being met in presence and connection with another human being, our brain will divert to a substance or a behavior to get those needs met. And that's where the lover is really, really important, because he's in charge of connection, empathy, sensuality, emotional fluency. And if he is in tandem with the warrior, which is in charge of clear communication, purpose, discipline, courage, and direction, they can work really, really well together. They give lots of information to the king to act in a really, really benevolent way and lead this kingdom very, very well. Same as if the magician is involved in that council, where he's giving data and insight and awareness, and he's creative with things, but he's not manipulating. He's just handing over raw data. Together, they can all work well. So essentially, the warrior, the magician, and the lover hand the king information, and the king makes the decision. Now, in the lover's deflated state, he turns to the impotent, so numbness, checking out, again, deep, deep sadness. It's important to understand these things. And the gateway emotion for each of these archetypes, for the lover, it's sadness. So when you're feeling deep sadness, if you're ever feeling deep sadness, it means that something has been triggered in your lover state, your lover part of your psyche, and it's seeking connection, empathy, emotional fluency, and sensuality and beauty. That is what that part is. If you're feeling sad, it's because you've lost connection with something. The magician, the emotion associated with the magician is fear. So fear is a lack of awareness, insight, information. When you don't know, like, you can become fearful. So what the magician needs is information. So the lover needs connection, the magician needs information. So you go and ask questions, you find out, you have these difficult conversations. What the warrior's emotion is anger, as we've said. So when you're feeling angry, it's because either discipline has fallen and you've not put in boundaries. So the warrior, when you're feeling angry, he needs boundaries, either boundaries with yourself or boundaries with other people. When have you said yes when you meant no? When have you said no when you meant yes? Really having these hard conversations and letting your warrior come online and say the difficult things that need to be said. And the king, the emotion associated with the king is joy. So when we feel joy, our king is alive. He's alive and well. He's running the realm. He's on top of things. So when we feel joy, we are activating that king archetype inside of our psyche. When we don't feel joy, when we feel the absence of joy, what is important to do is to seek connection with something greater than yourself, whether that's any form of religion or faith or um, community or nature. The king really enjoys getting out into nature and being connected to something much greater than you because he is in charge of seeing the long vision. And if he's down here, we often associate the king with the buzzard. The buzzard flies high and can see the whole horizon, but he can also spot a tiny mouse down on the ground, swoop down, eat it, back up again. If the buzzard spends all of his time up here and doesn't eat any mice, yeah, he'll die. If he spends all of his time down on the ground eating mice all the time, he gets too fat and lazy and his wings start to wilt and die and he can never fly again. So it's about having this balance. The king is all about balance, being able to have the view of the long game and be able to spot the fine details and swoop down and eat the mice. So again, if you're not feeling joy, it could be because you've lost sight of what this is all for. You've lost sight of the vision and you're so busy catching these mice, focusing on the small problems, that the king has just become lazy and stuck on the ground. So let's try and get off the ground and back up into the air, seeing the whole vision. So that's what we focused on today is these different archetypes that are at play, how they are showing up, and all the other elements of, how we can master our reactions from victimhood to working through our triggers and our window of tolerance using the trigger tracker and the make a better choice mantra. Understanding this all comes from our nervous system response and how we can actually work with our nervous system in a beautiful way through the polyvagal theory and using our breath. And ultimately, how this all creates more safety for our partner to feel more connected to us. So, as part of our emotional reset system, we're looking to pause and regulate. We're still dropping the agenda. We are not, trying to control. We are shifting the energy. We are lowering our tone. We're slowing things down. We're asking questions like, can you repeat that for me again? What was your intention in doing that? Did you mean it to sound like this? What was it? Was that what you meant? X, Y, or Z? And seeking information. And we're shifting the energy to observe rather than absorb. And we're inviting our partner instead of putting pressure on them. We're able to talk in a calmer, more composed way so that they feel safe to bring us anything. We want to be a safe space for them to bring their conflict because it might not be you. It might be them and it might be you, and you need to own it without any shame. Shameless ownership. So, in closing, this is really, really important for us to do this. This is the man who can lead with emotional fluency because he's mastered his reactions. His emotions are not in charge of him, he is in charge of them. And this is how you become trustworthy by mastering your state. Being calm and presence is a powerful state. So, calm and presence is powerful. And this is where leadership begins. I'll see you next week.